योऽन्तः प्रविश्य मम वाचं मां प्रसुप्तां सञ्जीवयत्यखिलशक्तिधरस्वधाम्ना न्यांश्च हस्तचरणश्रवणत्वगादीन् प्राणान् नमो भगवते पुरुषाय तुभ्यम् यं गुरुं हि स्वयं सत्यः प्रज्ञाभक्तिविनीतयः दीप्तिश्चापि वृता नित्यं तं गुरुं प्रणमाम्यहम् सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। ॐ सहनौ भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः। 26 यत्सेतुः कृतिनां नृणामपरमं दुःखाब्धिसन्तारणे यत्संसारसमुद्रतारणहृदां भूयः परं चाभयम् ब्रह्मैतद्विधं तदक्षरमिह ज्ञातुं नृभिः शक्यते चेतुं चाप्यपरं न तत्र विधिना नो नाचिकेतात्मकम् बुद्ध्या सारथिना मनोरशनया स्तोमाश्वैरनुकृष्यमाणमधिरुह्यात्मा शरीरं रथम् शब्दादीन् विषयान् यतोऽनुभवति प्रज्ञानिनो मुं ततः भोक्तारं ब्रुवते हृदिन्द्रियशरीरोपाधि संयोगतः विज्ञानं च समाहितं च हृदयं नो बुद्धिसूतस्य चेत् वश्याः स्यात् कथमिन्द्रियाश्वविदतिः यद्यस्ति वश्यातु सा विज्ञानेन समाहितेन मनसा युक्तस्तु यत्सारथिः स प्राप्नोति ह्यासितं परपदं नान्यस्तु दुस्सारथिः विज्ञानी शुचिरात्मवांस्तु पुरुषः संसारमार्गस्य तत्पारं विष्णुपदं प्रयाति न पुनः संसारमापद्यते विज्ञानेन समाहितेन मनसा रिक्तः पुनश्चाशुचिः तद्विष्णोः परमं पदं न भजते संसार एव स्थितः स्थूलादिन्द्रियसञ्चयात् खलु परः सूक्ष्मोऽर्थसङ्घो मनः तस्माच्चापि परं ततोऽपि धिषणाम् तस्याः परो वै महान् अव्यक्तं महतः परं हि पुरुषः अव्यक्तात् परस्तत्परं नो किञ्चित् सपरागतिः सपराकाष्ठा हि सर्वान्तरः। So this basically verse 30 basically conveys the essence of two mantras which speak of Purushasya Parakashtha. So since we have a class after a long time, I will quickly render those mantras. So we had these mantras: Indriyebhyah Parahyarthaha, Arthebhyascha Param Manaha, Manasastu Parabuddhihi, Buddheratma Mahan Paraha, Mahatah Param Avyaktam Avyaktat Purushah Paraha, Purushanna Parang Kinchit Sakashtha Sa Paragatihi. These are the two mantras. In fact, there is a long vichara which is done by Ramaraja, which is what I will be discussing with you today. But before I get into the vichara, which starts with Nacha, that is where I think we have to start our discussion on page 27. But before that, let me just tell you this. There is an interesting statement which I found in the commentary of Anandagiri. This Anandagiri, while discussing this Bhagavad-pada's Bhashya, Bhagavad-pada himself in this mantra, this, what is the purport of these two mantras? That is to be clearly understood. Is it something which has to describe the superiority of one over the other thing, or is it something which has to convey something else? This has been hinted by Bhagavad-pada right at the beginning of the commentary. Adhuna yat padam gantavyam tasya indriyani sthulanyarabhya sukshmataratamya kramena pratyagatmataya adhigamah kartavyah ityevamartham idam arabhyate. This is the upodghata for the commentary. What does he say? Sukshma taratamya kramena. In order to make you understand that this concept of Atman is something which is far, far, far more subtle than other things. So this kind of a description is given to you, not to tell you that this is superior to that, this is superior to that. See, Indriyebhyah Paraha, Arthaha, Arthebhyascha Param Manaha, etc. It is not a question of saying the superiority of one over the other. After all these entities are only bhutas. So who is most important means whether it is Patni or Putra or Pita, Pitamaha. It depends on what you want to describe. All are basically bhautika padarthaha. So similarly here, the idea is to take you along a particular direction, to think you along a particular direction. That is what is being hinted by Bhagavad-pada. Pratyagatmataya adhigamah kartavyah ityevamartham arabhyate. Now, while describing the word manaha and buddhi also, there are some interesting phrases which are employed by Bhagavad-pada. I want to draw your attention to that. While describing manaha, he says, Manaha manashabdavachyam manasaha arambhakam bhuta sukshmam sankalpa vikalpat dyarambhakatvat. Then he says, Manaso pipara sukshmatara mahattara pratyagatma bhuta cha buddhihi buddhi shabdavachyam adhyavasaya dyarambhakam bhuta sukshmam. Now this is something which is worthy of contemplating for a moment. So when I was just reading this today, it occurred to me, why would Acharya take it to the extent of bhuta sukshma? In all the places he uses this word. Suppose I were to ask you, what is anger? What is happiness? How will you describe? Any emotion for that matter. You can only realize when the word is being employed a certain state of his mind. So it cannot be described precisely like this is ghata, this is anger, this is happiness. You cannot show that. Similarly, it is far more difficult for us to make a distinction between different states that we are describing through different words of mind. That is why if you look at the way he is describing Manashabdavachyam. So we want to describe something, and for describing that which all of us do understand, we employ a word called Manaha. So Manashabdena Vachyam. Kim Vachyam Bhavati? See, Sankalpa Vikalpat Yarambhakatvat, he is saying. So you can just Sankalpa and Vikalpa, you can just describe with the word thought, let us say. Now at the next level, Manaso Pipara Buddhi, next level he is saying. So there he is saying Manaso Pipara Sukshmatara Mahattara Buddhi. What is Buddhi? Buddhi Shabdavachyam Adhyavasayadhyarambhakam Bhuta Sukshmam. See, if you look carefully, after all, Adhyavasaya is certain determination that we are trying to. So this Adhyavasaya is a certain nishchaya, a determination that we do. Adhyavasayadi arambhakam bhuta sukshma. So it refers to a certain aspect of antahkarana, or rather a certain transformation which is happening inside for you to take a determination. Adhyavasayadi arambhakam. So this Adhyavasaya makes you think along a particular direction and then you set into action. So therefore this Buddhi or Manaha, they are all certain Bhuta Sukshma. So we will not be able to say anything more beyond that. Okay? So that is why Bhagavad Pada here says Buddhi Shabda Vachyam Adhyavasayadhyarambhakam Bhuta Sukshmam. A certain transformation that takes place inside which cannot be described. So it is responsible for that. So therefore he is describing both as this. Then of course, so you know that it is the determination which you do, but you will not be able to quantify it. We all of us understand what it is. Okay, he is a determined person to achieve something. What is that? It is difficult. So that is why he is describing this Buddhi, Manaha, etc. both as some Bhuta Sukshma, which is responsible, whose effect can be seen by. So this is something which is important to note. And here Anandagiri says, see, Buddhischa Atmeti. There is an interesting comment which is made by Anandagiri. Why is Acharya saying Buddhi Shabda Vachyam Bhuta Sukshmam? So here he says, Buddhischa Atmeti Keshanchid Abhimanaha. See, so one class of Buddhas, Buddhischa Atmeti Keshanchid Abhimanaha Tadavana Apanayanaya Aha Buddhi Shabda Vachyamiti. And Buddhi, in fact, all of us know, Buddhi is an instrument. Karana Goshtau Pravishati, natu Kartru Goshtau. How do you know? It is from our own usages of sentences. Therefore, Anandagiri says, Karanatvat Indriyavat Buddhehe Bhautikatvam Siddham. Karanatvat Bhautikatvam Siddham. Karanatvancha, he says, Swabuddhya Ahamupalabhe Ityanubhava Siddham. Understand? Karanatvam, how do you know? Swabuddhya Tritiya. Swabuddhya Ahamupalabhe. There is a very interesting usage by very interesting usage by Aryabhata. Says Sadasajnana Samudrat Samudhritam Devata Prasadena Sajnanottama Ratnam Maya Nimagnam Swamati Nava. So Matinava means by plunging into the ocean of knowledge, I have lifted this gem. Matinava. The prayoga. So through this I understand. So through this I understand means it is an instrument which has been employed by you. And therefore, Karana Goshthav Pravishati Buddhihi Natu Kartru Goshthav. So as some people say, so he is saying it is in contradiction to your own usages of sentences. The usage of sentence is born out of experience. So what we need to understand is, even in Vedanta, ultimately it boils down to your experiential knowledge which is put into some theoretical framework. Ityanubhava siddha. Tataha, then he says, Bhutavayava samsthaneshveva arthadishu uttarottaram paratvam kalpyam. Bhuta avayava samsthaneshveva. All these, indriyebhyah parahyarthaha, arthebhyascha param manaha, manasastu para buddhihi. All these are essentially bhutavayava. So some form of bhuta. Okay? Bhuta avayava samsthaneshveva arthadishu uttarottaram paratvam kalpyam. Vai paramapurushartha didarsha ishaya. This is an interesting usage. What is didarsha isha? Darshayitum ichha didarsha isha. Darshayitum ichha didarsha isha. A desire to make you understand, okay, to demonstrate. So paramapurushartha didarsha ishaya natu arthadinam paratvam pratipipada ishitam. Arthadinam paratvam na pratipipada ishitam. Pratipipadayitum ichha pratipipada isha. So here this mantra is not just to demonstrate that this is superior to this or this is superior to that. That is not the import of this mantra. Why? He is saying there are two factors which he says that is very interesting to note. He says prayojana bhavat vakya bheda prasangacheti. So by saying that manas is superior to this, indriya is superior to this, elsewhere you may say, so artha is superior to indriya also. How can you say? Because artha grabs indriya. So that is not the import here. From a different viewpoint, you can say those things also. The prayojana bhavat. So it is this superiority that is being stated by the word para in some sense. That is not the import of this mantra. It is just a certain line of thinking which leads you to the most subtle element. Most subtle element. Prayojana bhavat. Then vakya bheda prasangacha. This is a shastra prayoga. Vakya bheda prasangacha. It has various meanings. This vakya bheda is to be understood differently in different contexts. Here, vakya bheda means the ultimate purport. Okay, so it takes a different direction then. Okay, so the entire shastra is meant for conveying something. So if you say that this is what is being stated here, then there is a vakya bheda. You take a tangential direction. So that is not what is intended. So this is some interesting comment which we find in Anandagiri. Now let me take you to the Ramaraja's commentary. So here he presents an interesting discussion. Where did we end? The mantra ends by saying Purushanna parang kinchit sakashtha sa paragatihi. So there Ramaraja engages in some interesting discussion. There are 2-3 levels in which he presents the argument. We will go one by one. See, there are a few typos also here, so all of you should have a pen. So there are quite a few here. Okay, he starts with saying in page 27, after the long para, we have this discussion. न च पुरुषस्यापि कश्चिदन्तरः अस्ति इति वाच्यम् अनवस्थापत्तेः. So this is the first sentence. After all, antara. So something which is more subtler, etc., you are taken through. Purushasyapi kaschidantaraha asti. Purushanna parang kinchit. You said there is nothing which is beyond Purusha, you are saying. Why not you take something beyond Purusha? Then he says, Anavasthapatte. You will end up with infinite regression. Somewhere you have to stop. Anavasthapatte. Therefore, he says, Tasmat Pratyagatma Purushayeva Ishvaraha Sayeva Purushottamascha. Therefore, you have to take this Pratyagatma, who is described by the word Purusha. Sayeva Ishvaraha. Sayeva Purushottamascha. Why is he using this? We have this phrase, no? I think in Bhagavad Gita you have 15th chapter. There you have the word Purushottama, right? Uttamah Purushastvanyah Paramatmetyudarutaha Yolokatrayamaviha. That is where Dvavimau Purusho Loke Ksharaschakshara Yevacha Ksharas Sarvani Bhutani Kutasthokkshara Yichyate Uttamah Purushastvanyah. Correct. Uttamah Purusha. So this is Purushottama essentially. He is saying whatever is described by the word Purusha here is to be taken as the ultimate thing. And that entity is Pratyagatma. So how do you understand the word Pratyagatma? There are two words here which form this compound Pratyagatma. Pratyakchaso Atma Cheti Pratyagatma. This is how you have to derive that word. Pratyakchaso Atma Che Pratyagatma. Pratyagatma. What is Pratyak? What is Atma? They seem to be giving almost the same meaning. Then why do you use this word Pratyagatma? Pratyakchasu Atma Che Pratyagatma. In fact, the very word Pratyak, the word Pratyak has a very interesting derivation. Prati Anchati iti Pratyak. Prati Anchati iti Pratyak. In fact, see, I should tell a difficult sutra today. To test Aradhana. See, this word Pratyak is formed by just anyway 2 minutes, some fun. So this word Pratyak is formed by a suffix, by adding a suffix called quin. Quin is a suffix which has been invoked to explain the formation of a few words. And in fact, these are words which are described as nipatas. And I will list a few of them. There is an interesting sutra. You repeat the sutra. Ritvig dadrik.
Ritvig dadrik. Ritvig dadrik.
Sragdigushnik.
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 Sragdigushnik. Ritvig dadrik. Sragdigushnik. Ritvig dadrik. Sragdigushnik. There are 5 words. Ritvig dadrik. Sragdigushnik. Okay. Then 3 more words are there in the sutra. Anchuyuji Krunchancha. Anchuyuji Krunchancha. Anchu Yujik Krunchancha. This is in third adhyaya. So here there are two classes of words. So first 5 words belong to one class. Then you find this Anch. That is why I brought this Anchati. Because later also in Ramaraya you will see in the next page he uses the word Pratichi. So it has to do with Pratyak. This has an interesting formation. Anyway, so here it basically starts with Prati, Anch and then Quin. In Quin, all of them will be gone. Okay, nothing will remain. So what do you have? Prati, Anch, Pratyanch. That is all. It is a Pratyanch Shabda. And it will start with Pratyak, Pratyanchau, Pratyanchaha. Then Pratyanchau. Not Pratichaha. So that is what is interesting. So Pratyak, Pratyanchau, Pratyanchaha, Pratyancham, Pratyanchau, Pratichaha, Praticha, Pratyakbhyam, Pratyakbhihi. And that is how you will have Pratichaha and Pratichi. Okay, in Saptami. So this is a special word and it has some special connotation also. See, this Pratyak, this Prati here should be understood as Pratipam. Pratipam means Viparitam. Okay, Anchati. See, Anchati means the self is understood somewhat differently than other things. So this is self and it has different characteristics. That is so, so that I explained in the earlier class. So I am not going into that now. But the formation of the word is through this. And Ritvik also is like that only. Rutu, Yuju, and then Quin. Ritvik. Rutu, Yuju, Quin, Ritvik. So these are all little difficult in derivation. There is a long derivation, various sutras coming into play. But anyway, this Pratyagatma he is using. So this Pratyagatma, he further takes the discussion. So the first level is, why not you say that there is something which is Antara then Purusha? The answer is, you will end up with infinite regression. So we stop there. This is one answer. Now he says, Nanu Purushaha Jivaha. Normally, we also use Purusha Stri. So Purushaha Jivaha is a normal being only. Okay, Purushaha Jivaha. Pratyagatma Tadantaraha. So why not you take it that way? See, you are saying Pratyagatma Purushaha. So Purusha is generally understood to be some Jiva. And Pratyagatma is someone who is the one who is driving this Purusha. Pratyagatma Tadantaraha Ishvaraha Paramatma. So he is trying to substantiate his position by quoting some Antaryami Brahman. Yes, so there Atra cha Antaryami Brahmanam Pramanam. That should be one word. Antaryami Brahmanam Pramanam. Okay. This Antaryami Brahmanam is a specific section in Vedāntamuktāvalī. Yo Vijñāne Tishtan Vijñānādantaro Yam Vijñānam Veda. So Antara, it will be there. Okay. Yo Kshitishtan. So everywhere, Antaro Yamayati is a phrase which will repeat in every mantra. So there is a certain pramana that he shows here. This Antaryami Brahmana says that someone is driving from inside. So that could be taken as Paramatma. Why should you say that Purushaha is Paramatma? And if you take it that way, he says, Nacha Anavastha Paramatmanaha. In fact, Nacha Anavastha should not be a separate para. It should be just taken with the previous para. Okay? So because the same argument runs through. Atra cha Antaryami Brahmanam Pramanam Nacha Anavastha. So earlier you were saying this anavastha dosha. Paramatmanah antarasya anyasya anabhyupagamat. So, Paramatmanah antarasya anyasya anabhyupagamat iti chet. Suppose you ask this, you present this as a Purvapaksha. So, why do we take this? See, Purusha to be Pratyekatma. Take some other entity, Ishvara as Pratyekatma. And this is in consonance with Yontaroya Mayati, which is repeatedly said in the Antaryami Brahmana. And there is only one driving force in every entity. Let us take it that way, which is different from Purusha. Anabhyupagamat iti chet. Suppose this is the Purvapaksha. Iti chet, you should split and then say Maivam. That is where the answer starts. You should put a hyphen and then say Maivam. This is how usually it is written. Then the answer is, he says, Purushayeva parakashtha. Parakashtha you should split. Similarly, paragatihi you should split. It cannot be one. So, Purushayeva parakashtha paragatihi iti prakrita shruti virodhat. He says, this Shruti in the Upanishad says, Avyaktat Purushah Paraha Purushan Naparam Kinchit Sa Kashtha Sa Paragatihi. This is what the Shruti says. Purushan Naparam Kinchit Sa Kashtha Sa Paragatihi. Since the Shruti says that there is nothing which is beyond Purusha, if you accept something as Pratyekatma which is beyond Purusha, then this is in contradiction to the Shruti. Therefore, he says, Prakrita Shruti Virodhat. We would not like to give any interpretation which is not in concordance with the Shruti. Shruti Virodha will be there, and therefore we would not like to do. Then he says, Antaryami Brahmanasya ca Prakrita Pratyagatma Paratvat. In fact, even the Antaryami Brahmana, if you carefully read, so it essentially describes this Purusha only. So there is nothing which is stated, which is in contradiction to what is being stated here. So your misunderstanding should be gotten rid of. This is how he discards that. Now he says, there is a second level of argument which is taken now. Nacha Prakrita Shruti Purusha Shabdasya Paramatmaiva Arthaha Na Pratyagatmeti Vachyam. Then he says, okay, now let us do one thing. This Pratyagatma and Purusha is equating them. That is where I have this problem. He says, Prakrita Shrutigata Purusha Shabdavachyaha Paramatmaiva. Like Uttam of Purushastvanyaha. So let us take this Purusha to be Paramatma. Okay? Na Pratyagatma. Okay? Na Pratyagatma means your own self. Your own self, which is seen. So this identifying is a bit of a problem for me. So let us do this way. This Purusha is Paramatma and it has nothing to do with Pratyagatma. Let us take this position. Nacha Prakrita Shrutigata Purusha Shabdasya Paramatmaiva Arthaha. Okay? Na Pratyagatmeti Vachyam. Even this is not tenable. Why? There is a typo here. It should be Prakrita Shrutau. Okay? Prakrita Shrutau Pratyagatmavaji Shabdantarabhavat. So this is an interesting discussion in a theoretical framework. He says, in this Shruti, you cannot bring in any other person than this Purusha. Okay? Prakrita Shrutau Pratyagatmavachi Shabdantarasya abhavat. Understand? What does this imply? This implies that the Shruti must necessarily have a word which refers to this self. Okay? See, Prakrita Shrutau, in this Shruti, I have no problem. See, the answer is, I have no problem in taking the word Purusha to mean Paramatma. I have no issues. But then you have to bring in a word which refers to Pratyagatma in this Shruti. So without that, so this argument is not complete. That is why he is saying, Prakrita Shrutau Pratyagatmavaji Shabdantara Bhavat. Because there is no other word which refers to this individual self in the Shruti. This position that you are saying is not acceptable. Why is he saying this? This has to be understood. See, this has to do with the way the mantra starts. The whole discussion commences. If you step back a few mantras, where did it start? Atmanam rathinam vidhi shariram rathamevatu. That is where the discussion commenced. Then we went on. So Atmanam rathinam vidhi means, does it refer to somebody else? Or does it refer to this individual? Shariram ratham atma rathi. That is where the discussion starts. Atmanam rathinam vidhi shariram rathamevatu buddhim tu sarathim vidhi manah pragrahamevacha. This is how it starts. And you actually went the other way around. If you look at it, the sequence of Buddhim tasarathim vidhi manah pragrahamevacha indriyani hayanahuhu. It goes. So this rathiratha kalpana which is there is meaningful only when there is a word in this mantra which goes and ends with this Purusha, which is referred by the word Atman there. That is why he is saying Prakrita Shrutau Pratyagat Avadi Shabdantara Bhavat. Then Pratyagat Manaha Paramatma Paraiti Hi Avashyam Bhaktavyam. This sentence is a little tricky here. In fact, this can be taken as a part of the next discussion also in the next para. But then the word kincha is a little problematic. I will explain that in a minute. See, this sentence as such, Pratyagatmanaha Paramatma Paraitihi Avashyam Bhaktavyam. Either there is a typo here. So you can either say Pratyagatmanah Paramatma Aparaiti Avashyam Bhaktavyam. Okay, this will complete the discussion here. This is in consonance with the previous sentence. You understand? Pratyagatmanaha Paramatma Aparaha iti Avashyam Bhaktavyam. Means he is not different. See, this is one way of correcting this. Or you can just say Pratyagatmanaha. See, because what he says is, from this individual, Paramatma should be described as different. Anyaha. See, Paraha iti Avashyam Bhaktavyam. That does not substantiate what is being said before. Okay? So you can take it this way, or this can be taken as an introduction to the discussion that he is trying to present in the next para. You will see. So in which case you should move it to the next para. You can move and then club that also. Okay, with the word paraha. That you will understand easily. See, let us take the discussion forward. He says, Pratyagatmanah Paramatma Paraiti Kathanam. See, you follow this? So, if this is like a Pratignya Vakya, Paraiti Avashyam Bhaktavyam. But then the problem is this word normally Kincha is not used there. But one can take it also, there is no problem. Why he is just saying, and he presents four possibilities. If you say Pratyagatma is different from Paramatma, what are the four possibilities? In which way are you arguing this way? There are four interesting things he presents. Pratyagatmanah Paramatma Paraiti Kathanam. Why are you saying? He says, Kim Paramatmanah Karyam Pratyagatmeti Dhiya. The first option. What is the first option? Paramatmanah Karyam Pratyagatmeti Dhiya. So is it because you say, suppose we have this mantra, Atmi Vedamagre Asid Nanyat Kinchana Mishat. Suppose you take that, okay, that Upanishad. So from that came everything, right? So from Atman came everything. So that is a karya you can think of. Prasamataha mritpinda eva asid idanim ghadasaravadikam see utpannam ghadasaravadikam mridah karyam. So are you saying in that sense? Kim paramatmanah karyam pratyagatmeti dhiya. First. Second position. Yadva paramatmanah amshaha pratyagatmeti. Amshaha means a part. It is like this. Sometimes I have seen, or maybe I would have also done in my childhood. See this, there may be kheer in big vessel, some special item. So you take some part of it, put it in a glass and then give it. The child may say, no, I want that. So you may say, so this is same as that. No, I want that. Understand? So here this is amsha, you understand? Tasya amshaha. One part has been taken and put in this. But then you may say, no, this is different. You just once again you may have to pour from that. So this is sometimes, it is that way you have to understand. It is not a karya karana, but is amshamshi. Okay? So yadva paramatmanah amshaha pratyagatmeti. Second way. Athava Paramatma niyamyaha iti. Third is niyamya niyamaka bhava. First is cause and effect. Second is part and whole. The third is niyamya niyamaka. So the controller and the controlled. Okay, this is the third option. Athava paramatma niyamyaha iti. Then fourth, uta paramatmana vyapta iti. See? Paramatmana vyaptaha. See this. Vyapta is the one who is pervading is vyapaka. So he is vyapta. So Paramatma is vyapaka. I am Purushaha vyapyaha. So it is in that sense. Uta Paramatmana vyapta iti. Okay? So this in this sense are you saying? Now Nadyaha. The first position is not tenable. See, why he is saying Ajatvena Pratyagatmanaha. So there should be avagraha there. Pratyagatmanaha akaryatvat. Okay? So there should be a avagraha. So what does he say? This karya karana bhava will not work, man. Why? Okay? So here he says, this Pratyagatma is described as Najayate Mriyate Va Kadachit Nayam Bhutva Bhavitava Nabhuyaha. It is the Sharira which takes the Janma, and it is the Sharira which has the mriti, and therefore this ajatvena pratyagatmanaha, it cannot be considered as karya akaryatvat. Then there is a problem here. So this word dvitiya should be struck off, and then the first letter should be made tritiyaha. Okay, so you should first make this correction. So there is a mistake here. Na tritiyaha. So he will take the second paksha later, as we see in the text. So there is a typographical error. Na tritiyaha. See, after all, you can present 4 positions and then say the first is not okay, the third is not okay, fourth is not okay. You can just discard one by one in the sequence in which you desire. So it is that way he is doing. Na tritiyaha. Why? Sushupti mriti murchadishu paramatmaniyam yatvasya pratyagatmani adarsanat. So he takes 3 avasthas. What are the 3 avasthas? Sushupti. Do you exist during Sushupti? Yes, I exist. Do you feel that you are controlled by someone during Sushupti? No. Right? So then a huge problem will be there. See, so niyamyatvam is a problem. See, that I am controlled by somebody no one wants. Right? At least during Sushupti you are not. So I am na niyamyaha. See? So Sushupti, first one. Then the second avastha he is talking about is mriti. This mriti one can understand in 2 ways. One is it can be taken as a instantaneous process. Understand? Mriti is sharirat pranaviyogaha. Mritihi means sharirat pranaviyogaha mritihi. So then it is an instantaneous process. Obviously, even in that process, there is nothing like niyamya niyam. Okay? So niyamya niyamaka bhava is not there, just as in Sushupti. So somebody makes your prana drive away. That doesn't happen. Even if you want, it will not happen. So this is something which we have to understand. Mriti. Even if you take the other way around, mriti as a prolonged avastha, okay, if you want to take, then also there is nothing like niyamya niyam. So unless you feel, see, so sharirat sharirantara sancharaha you do. There may be a certain period in between. So even during that sthiti kala, there is nothing like niyamya niyamaka bhavaha. So that is also not possible. Then murcha is all the more evident. See, when you are unconscious. See, murcha avastha. There are also niyamya bhavaha. So that is not there. Therefore he is saying paramatmaniyam yatvasya pratyagatmani adarsanat. Okay? We do not see. So it is in contradiction with our experience. Therefore that position also is not tenable. Then he says jagaradautu, on the other hand, buddhyaditadatmyadhyasa prayuktameva jivasya niyamyatvam. Okay? So this niyamyatvam that you experience is essentially because you identify yourself with the buddhi. Okay? Buddhyaditadatmyadhyasa prayuktameva means it is only through this adhyasa this jivasya niyamyatvam. Otherwise it is not there. Okay? Then naturiyaha, the 4th position. What has that to do with? That has to do with the vyapya vyapaka bhava. See, the pervaded and the pervader. Okay. So niravayave vyapake. You see the word pratichi. So this is Pratichi, means Pratyagatma, Saptami. So Niravayave Vyapake Pratichi Vyapyatva Yogat. So Vyapyatva Yogat. So there is nothing like this Pratyagatma which can be taken as a limited agent. Okay. So Vyapya is Nyunadesha Vritti, Vyapaka is Adhikadesha Vritti. So now this Pratyagatma is Vyapya and Paramatma is Vyapaka. So this is not possible. Okay. So both are infinite in nature. Okay. So both do not have any paricheda. So therefore, Niravayave. See, only when there is some entity which is Savayava, you can think of Vyapaka Bhava. Okay. Niravayave Vyapake Pratichi is Pratichi. Pratik, Pratyagatma itself is Vyapaka. And therefore, Vyapyatva Yogat. Then he says, Atah Parishishtaha Kalpo Dvitiyaha. Now it is all the more clear that the Dvitiya has to be turned as Tritiya. Okay. He says, Atah Parishishtaha. Parishishta means something which is remaining. Okay. So we have discarded three positions. There is only one position which is remaining. Atah Parishishtaha Kalpaha Dvitiyaha. What is the Dvitiya Kalpa? Tasya Pratyak Parabhede Eva Tatparyam. Okay. Abhede Eva. That is how you have to understand. Okay. Tasya cha means that position has to do with Amshamshi Bhava. Right? So that Amshamshi Bhava is saying Tasya Pratyak Para Abhede Eva Tatparyam. So the import of that, even when you say Amshamshi, okay, Tatraiva Tatparyam. Why? So there also there is a typo. See, if you look at Niramsheshwarasya, it should be Niramsheshwarasya Amshamshitva Kalpana Yogat. Okay. It should, that sa should be turned as ya. Niramsheshwarasya Amshamshitva Kalpana Yogat. So Niramshaha Yaha Ishvaraha Tasya Amsha Amshitvam. Okay, so there is a lot of discussion which goes on even in Brahma Sutra Bhashya. There is a huge adhikarana. Okay. So it is very interesting about this Amshamshi Bhava which seems to be described in Shrutis, how is to be understood and so on. Niramsheshwarasya Amshamshitva Kalpana Yogat. Amshamshi Kalpana is not appropriate. He will explain that further. See, Paramatma Bhinnaha Pratyagatmeti Vaktum Hi Paramatma Vishaha. Understand? If at all you find this kind of Amshamshi Bhava described in Shruti, that is primarily to convey you. Okay? Paramatma Bhinnaha Pratyagatma iti Vaktum Hi, in order to convey the message that this is not different from that, this Amshamshi Bhava is described. Paramatma Bhinnaha Pratyagatmeti Vaktum Hi Paramatmamshaha Pratyagatmetyuktam. So this Amsha, Anguli is an Amsha. So is Anguli different from you? So Amshamshi Bhava. So that is how he is trying to convey here. Pratyagatmetyuktam, or you take the other examples which are generally given. Bhavatva घटाकाशो महाकाशस्येव परमात्मनः प्रत्यगात्मा अंशः. If at all you want to say, bhavatu va means even if you try to use this example, what is the example? Ghatakasha mahakashat bhinnaha, suppose you say. So that kind of an amshamshi bhava, if you accept, it is essentially accepting that this akasha is not different from that akasha. So though it may look different, but it is not different. See? So that is why he is saying bhavatu va ghatakashaha mahakashasyeva paramatmanaha pratyakatma amshaha. See? Now, in fact, the adhikarana, I am just reminded of the sutra, amsho nanavyapadeshat. It's a long adhikarana in Brahma Sutra. Nanavyapadeshat means that is the Purva Paksha. Understand? Yatha vispulingaha vicharanti. So something like that. Those mantras will be taken as a Vishayavakya there. So the Shruti itself describes that there are so many people emanating. So that Deva is an Amsha. So that is how it go. So here he says, Tathapi na vyapya vyapaka bhavaha tayoho. Tayo na vyapya vyapaka bhavastayoho. Tayoriva ekatvadeva. Tasmat pratyaka bhinnah paramatma iha purusha sabdartha. Pratyaka bhinnah paramatma. So this is the conclusion that he is trying to arrive at. What is the conclusion? Pratyaka bhinnah paramatma. So this paramatma is not different from pratyak. Pratyaka bhinnah paramatma. So pratyak shabda, as I told you, so it is pratyanch. No, since I wanted to introduce the word, this prati should be understood as pratipa. Let me just take you through an interesting alankara which is called pratipa alankara. Just to complete the discussion, this pratipa alankara, this pratipa, I told you, I think there is an interesting usage. Sushrushasva gurun kurupriya sakhi vrittim sapatni jane bhartur viprakritapi roshanataya masma pratipam gama. Pratipam means viparitam. Don't do that. That is how Kalidasa advises. Now there is a word pratipa which is used to indicate the name of the alankara also, where there is a viparita. I will give you this alankara. See, repeat. Pratipam upamanasya. Pratipam upamanasya. Upameyatva kalpanam. So the example is Tvallochana samam padmam. Tvallochana samam padmam. Tvallochana samam padmam. Tuvadvaktra sadrisho vidhu. Tuvadvaktra sadrisho vidhu. Tuvadvaktra sadrisho vidhu. Normally what do we say? Tvallochana samam padmam, here he is saying. See, this Aravindaksha. See, Akshi. So we usually use the simile to describe that the lotus is the simile for eyes. So here he is saying Tvallochana samam padmam. So he is doing it as viparita. Then similarly he is saying tvadvaktra sadrisho vidhu. So vidhu sadrisha vaktram illa. Tvadvaktram, vaktram means face. The moon is like your face. Understand? So this upamana is described as upameya here. So there it is a pratipalankara. Pratipam upamanasya upameyat vakalpanam tvallochana samam padmam tvadvaktra sadrisho vidhu. So in Alankara Shastra also they use the word pratipa to describe something which is viparita. So prati here means pratipam. Prati means pratipam. Prati anchati, okay, is pratipam anchati. That is how the word pratyinch gets formed. Okay, so we'll stop here. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahavirjam Karavavahi Tejasvinavadhi Tamastu Mavidrishavahi. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Sarve Sukhina Santu Sarve Santu Niramayaha Sarve Bhadrani Vashyantu Ma Kaschid Dukha Bhavet.